I was recently listening to one of my favourite podcasts, which is the YouTube channel 2toramble, in which Richard and Austin, a couple of clearly very good friends, talk about all sorts of topics, including books that they like. I first discovered them because they're both very big fans of Brandon Sanderson and in particular the Stormlight Archive. Richard tends to be the more measured and conservative in terms of his ratings of books and movies than Austin tends to be, and Austin tends to be the most enthusiastic one. So they both represent different parts of the way I regard a lot of the material that I consume. For instance, I think Austin is, he pretty much reflects my enthusiasm about Stormlight Archive, whereas Richard's a bit of a downer in relation to Brandon Sanderson's prose, but he does acknowledge that the books are good. Recently, though, there was a really interesting podcast, series of podcasts about the Pierce Brown series Red Rising. This is a series that I got into because of my husband who likes them. I think they're good. I enjoyed them. Oh, maybe enjoyed is the wrong word. I found them interesting and engaging, but I didn't love them, and I probably wouldn't reread them. In contrast, they seem to completely change Austen's world. He absolutely loved them. He gave a really good review to Red Rising, and then to my astonishment, he gave Golden Sun a 10 out of 10. The reason this is so startling to me is that the two of them have developed a very nuanced, structured, detailed review and rating system in which they go down to, numbers like 5.8.3 and all that sort of stuff. And they're very, very analytical about it. They consider books like Tolkien to be the benchmark and all that sort of stuff. So it seemed very strange to me that Austen could give Golden Sun a 10 out of 10. And I think that giving Golden Sun a 10 out of 10 really runs the risk of breaking their rating system. I'm going to do my own set of thoughts about the Red Rising series because I feel like I'm in a very unpopular minority in the sense that most of the people out there seem to really, really like it and rate it very highly. Whereas even though I thought it was okay, I have a lot of reservations about this series and there's lots of things about it that I don't like. But I also can acknowledge that I really understand Austen's enthusiasm and his rating the book 10 out of 10, but I do think it probably means that they need a different category. So I'll give you an example. There are lots of books and movies that I think are good and I think might be objectively good and might be technically good. But they're a little bit like what I call like the Oscar winners. So the last set of Oscars were pretty good because there were actually movies in there that I genuinely enjoyed. They weren't just worthy, and I will probably watch them again. But for the most part, a lot of movies that win the Oscars are movies that you watch, they're good, you acknowledge how great they are, but you don't really want to go back and watch them again. There are a lot of books that are like that. And then, so there are the books and the movies that are so amazing that they're very immersive, they transport you to a different world, they play with your emotions, you can't get them out of your head. I know that I really like a book when, as soon as I finished it, I find myself going all the way back to the beginning and reading it again. And that's kind of how I feel about movies. If I like a movie so much that I want to turn around and come back the next day and watch it again, I will do that. So there are plenty of movies that are not objectively great and a lot of other people wouldn't think were fantastic. So I'll give you an example. Pacific Rim. A lot of people consider that just an action popcorn flick. I loved it. I can see all of its faults. I can see all of its flaws. But in my head, I love that movie so much, I would rate it highly. I might not give it a 10 out of 10, but pretty close. There's other movies like Moulin Rouge. Again, lots of flaws, but it was so immersive for me and I loved it so much, and I loved the colour and the spectacle and the music and the performances that I saw it 3 days in a row and I loved it. Then there's Lord of the Rings, which my husband really didn't like, and a lot of people don't like, but I thought it was good. I saw that movie 6 times at the cinema. It devoured my brain. Two Towers I only saw twice at the cinema, maybe 3 times, and Return of the King I saw once. Another movie I really loved was Mad Max Fury Road. I thought that was amazing, and I watched that several times over. Then there are other movies that are like really, really good, and I think they're objectively good. So there's a movie called Searching for Bobby Fischer, which I think is called Night Moves in some countries, but it's all about a little chess prodigy. It's beautifully acted. It's, it's worthy. It's just really, it's a really good movie, and I do want to watch it again, and I do watch it again. But it's in a different league because it's actually very thoughtful and considered, and it's not just for entertainment. So there are movies like that they're worthy and they're a little bit more weighty, but I still really love them. And then, so if I go to books, I consider like pretty much the whole genre of romance to be that for me. Like I read a lot of historical romance, contemporary romance, mystery romance, and a lot of them are quite well written, but I never consider them to be high art or particularly literary. But some of them are just so funny and immersive, and I love the characters so much that I will go back and I'll read them over and over again. I will be invested in the characters, and I will write a ton of fan fiction, or I'll be thinking about them. So I rate those books really highly as well. But I wouldn't classify them in the same league as, say, A Lord of the Rings, which I loved and reread, or The Stormlight Archive. Those books are so nuanced and have a lot of depth. So I almost feel like the rating system needs to have something that acknowledges the ones that we, the books and the movies that we think are objectively good and, technically good. And then the ones that we think have got such an emotional punch and resonance that we love them despite all of their flaws, because I still rate them highly. And that's going to be much more subjective. So something like Red Rising and Golden Sun definitely did not affect me in the same way that it affected Austen. I really feel that Pierce Brown does not write his characters in a way that I really enjoy. Darrow's full of endless, self-indulgent, meandering monologues. He's a really annoying character. Mustang's not particularly compelling. EO is fridged. Not only is she fridged, but she's pulled out of the fridge again in book 2 and then used yet again along with other elements to catapult the plot along. He's got a real problem with, I think, in writing his sexual violence against women. So the way you know that a Pierce Brown character is bad, and not just bad in a nuanced way that means they can be redeemed and so they're an interesting character, genuinely bad and can't be redeemed. The way he signposts that a character is really bad and can never be redeemed and can only be redeemed by dying is that they must commit sexual violence against women. So I think it's prevalent in book 1 the most, but it's in book 2 and in book 3 as well. You'll see it there. So there will be some characters and you're like, oh, they're so bad, they can never be redeemed. But as long as they haven't committed sexual violence against women, they probably can be redeemed. But if they have committed sexual violence, then chances are the only way that they can sort of be okay is by dying. And I feel like that's a really cheap and nasty way to distinguish between characters that are genuinely bad and characters that are just a little bit bad. So anyway, that's my little bit of a rant about books and ratings.